Well, hello, and welcome to session number 19 of the FileMaker Group Therapy for Citizen Developers. My name is Tim Jones, and in today's session, we're going to explore web viewers at an introductory level. In some future session, we may delve into advanced uses of web viewers, but today, let's start with what is a web viewer. We'll see how to use the built-in web address templates, as well as how to construct a custom web address. And we will discuss how to avoid some common pitfalls. So, what is a web viewer? Well, a web viewer is a layout object, something you can place on a layout that displays a live web page right on the layout. Now, the interesting bit about web viewers is that the URL that you point to can be infused with data from the database. That is, you can include references to your field values to make the URL dynamic, changing as you move from record to record. Lastly, web viewers use the default web browser of your Mac or Windows computer, usually Safari or Microsoft Edge, as the engine that powers their unique capability. Now, let's get right into a demo of how to use web viewers. I'll switch into our database that we've been working with all along here, the Animal Care database. And I'm on the household form layout where we have the title of a household and then their street address. The first web viewer we're going to look at will take advantage of one of the built-in templates, one of the easiest kinds of web viewers to point to or web addresses to point to because all of the hard work is done for us. To begin, we'll go to layout mode. And I'll make the window a little bit larger. The web viewer tool is this tool right here. As with all of the other tools, or most I should say, click it once, and then come down into the layout and click and drag to draw the box that will contain the web viewer. When you release the mouse, the web viewer setup dialog box will appear. Here are all the built-in website or web address templates. Google Maps in the US, in Canada, in the UK. You can do a MapQuest or Google Web Search, again, in several different regions of the world, FedEx package tracking. And as I've clicked on each one of these built-in website templates, you see that they ask for one or more values to infuse into the URL, which makes it dynamic, makes it responsive, if you will, to the data in your database. Other templates include a Wikipedia search, Wiki News, Wiktionary, and so forth. All right, let's go back to the Google Maps US, which asks for as many as 5 fields to be infused into the URL. The static parts of the URL, FileMaker has already taken care of for us. It knows that a local Google Map address, if you were in a traditional web browser, would start with http://local.google.com/maps ? And then Q, which usually stands for query, equals, and then all of the dynamic bits about the address that you'd like to map. Street address, city, state, zip, and potentially country. To supply those arguments, those parameters, we simply come up here and next to each field, we choose either to specify a particular field or to write a calculation that will result in what we want used as the address, the city, the state, the zip, and the country. I'll choose specify field name. Again, we're in the household table and we have a field exactly for that, street. Likewise for city, I'll specify field name and choose the city field. For state, specify field name and choose the state field. Those are the only 3 that are required, but I'll go the extra mile and give it the zip code as well since we have it in the database. And as I've been supplying these field references, you can see that the field names themselves have been being inserted into the URL string. There's my street field from the household table, the city field from the household table, state, and zip as well. The options down below are generally left alone, left well set as they are. Allow interaction with the web viewer content means that you would like this web viewer to be live, that the database user could actually click in the web page on the links that are there, or in the case of a map, they can drag it around and explore and experience it in the same way they would if they were in a native web browser. Other options, again, are fine as they are. And generally speaking, you'll want to always leave on automatically encode the URL, because web URLs do have to follow a certain set of rules in terms of how they are specified. They have a strict syntax to them. As I click OK, you'll see the web address supplied there in the web viewer. If you had made a mistake or needed to change it for any reason, you can simply double click anywhere in the web viewer like this, and it will reopen the web viewer setup dialog box. All right, let's take a look. I'll exit out of layout mode, save the changes. And for the address here, we see the map coming up, and yikes, the web viewer is way too small to display a map. And we see our first pitfall to avoid. Web viewers need a lot of space. Let's make it auto size up to fill larger screens. I'll go back into layout mode, select the web viewer, and simply turn on all 4 of the auto sizing anchors, so that if the window gets made wider than the layout, this web viewer object will stretch horizontally and stretch vertically, as now I've tethered it to all 4 sides of the window. Now, as I make the window wider, you can see the web viewer object getting bigger and thus able to display much more content. We can also interact with the contents of the web page there and do things like collapse the side panel, click and hold and drag to recenter the map, zoom in or out, and so forth. And as we flip from record to record, notice the address that's being mapped now, 3708 Marber. Let's go to the next record, 6880 East Roxanne Way appears instead in the map. I'll collapse the side panel again. And that's what's most exciting about web viewers, is that they are capable of being dynamically infused with data from the current record of the database table or wherever you grab that data from. So that's how the built-in web viewer templates work. Now let's look at an example where the website URL is stored in a field, like over here in our vendors table. I'll go to more and vendors, and we'll jump into a particular vendor. And here we have the website of the actual vendor, and we can supply that field value as the custom web address for a web viewer. We can point a web viewer to whatever's in a particular field. Like before, I'll go to layout mode, click the web viewer tool, and draw a web viewer on this layout, giving it as much space or size as I possibly can, like so. And now in this case, I don't want to use any of the built-in templates. I'm just going to delete all of the stuff that was there in the web address field, and instead go and specify my own. You notice that as soon as I deleted that standard template text, the phrase custom web address, the choice here, became selected. Clicking specify, we can write a formula whose result will be used as the URL to go to. Okay. Now here's the website field in that vendor table, and I'll simply use a reference to that field because it's got a complete website address in it. Okay. And that's all we need. We'll say OK. Like before, I'll turn on all 4 auto sizing anchors so that this web viewer will stretch if the window is made wider and or taller. And let's see how it looks. Exit and save. And we'll stretch the window out a little bit. And we see that we are taken right to the Hesperia Veterinary Supply Incorporated website. We can scroll in it. We could click on the various links in it. We can totally interact with it. And as I go to another vendor record, Inland Vet Supply, that website loads as well. So the web viewer is dynamically pointing to the URL that's being changed as we flip from record to record. So in this example, the entire URL was stored in a field. So the formula that we had to write was simply a reference to that field. But what if you want to point to a website that's not among the built-in templates and needs to be infused with your data? Well, you'll want to go to the website first and perform your query in order to determine whether or not it uses URL parameters, and if so, to learn the syntax of the URL. Here's what I mean. I'm going to bring over a Safari window, a web browser window here. And I've already gone to a website, a2zanimals.com, which is a silly little website that lets us research animals. As I scroll down a little bit on the front page of their site, we can see a search box, find your favorite animals. All right, so I'll click in that search box and I'll search for bird, which is one of the genuses of pets that we have come visit our animal care clinic. And as I click the search button, I want you to pay attention to the address bar up here. Clicking search, it performs the search. We get the results, right? We get animals that fly that aren't birds, okay, bluebird versus blue jay and so forth. But looking at the address bar, more particularly, you have to click in it in some browsers to see the full URL. Look at that. There's our search term right there. So this is a website that we can use with a web viewer, right? The syntax of the URL is really clear. https:// then the domain name, a2zanimals.com, a /, the word search, another /, and then voila, our search word or search phrase if we had searched on multiple words. If we had searched using multiple words, by the way, and let me show you that, then it would replace the spaces in our search term. Let's say I search for red fox, right? And click search. It replaces the spaces with plus signs, like so, because spaces are not allowed in URLs. And we get our search results for the red fox. So that space, or excuse me, the plus sign in place of the space makes it a web safe URL. So again, this is a website that will work in a FileMaker web viewer. Now let's just copy that URL so we don't have to retype it by hand. There we go. And we'll head back over into FileMaker. And let's go over to the genus table of our database. I'll click more and genus, and we'll drill into the first genus. Let's say we want to see that A2zanimals webpage searching for the current genus, dog or cat or bird or snake. Okay, going to layout mode. We'll draw a web viewer on this layout. Again, making it as big as we possibly can. And this is going to be another custom web address. So I'll just wipe out all of this and I'll paste in the URL that I had grabbed out of the browser. Okay. Now that's not a valid formula right there. The literal or static parts of this need to be enclosed in quotation marks like this, quote and quote. And then we would need an ampersand because we're trying to concatenate our search term, which of course isn't going to be red fox every time. So I'll get rid of that, but I'll know that I want to replace that with a reference to the field of the title of the genus. To make it easier to type that field name, I'll click specify. We can go into the specify calculation dialog box and simply double click on the title field from the genus, the current genus record. There we go. So again, just some static text enclosed in quotes, ampersand for concatenating or appending to the end, and then our genus title. Let's see if it works. We'll say okay. And okay again. We'll turn on the auto sizing anchors to take advantage of resizing. Exit and save. All right, and just to avoid confusion, I don't need this browser window open anymore. And we can see that as I widen that window out, it has loaded the web page, giving us the search results for dog. How old is my dog in human years? Best dog food, and so forth. If we switch to the next genus record, cat, we can get the search results on a2zanimals.com for cat, and so on. Do a search for bird by just switching to the bird record, and likewise, the web address points to the correct URL to do a search on this website for bird. So it works. Now, let me show you the type of website that will not work in a web viewer. And since we're talking about animal species, I'll go ahead and pop open a new browser window. Let's go to the Integrated Taxonomic Information System at www.itis.gov. I'm guessing you've probably never been here before, unless you're really into animal or biological taxonomy. But this website contains a massive database, or lets us search a massive database for animals by their taxonomic name or their common name. I think I typed that right, but it doesn't seem to be loading very quickly. Thanks for your patience. There it is. And I'll do a quick search by common name in just the animal kingdom for any animal containing the word bird again. And we'll click search, and it performs the search, and we get just a zillion results. Okay, but that's not the results that we're interested in, it's the URL that we care about. So let's take, as soon as this finishes loading completely, let's take a look at the URL. As we look closely at the URL, we don't see our search term anywhere. Okay, we don't see our search word bird anywhere in the URL. So we could not query this website using a web viewer on a FileMaker layout. Why? Because web viewers point to URLs, and the only way we can infuse them with our data is as part of the URL. Without going into too much detail about HTML forms processing, some forms submit their request to the server using an action or using a method called get, which puts the form field values in the URL string as query parameters, like we saw with the a2zanimals.com URL. Other forms submit their request using a method called post, which sends the form field values in a way that's not visible to us as the users. This is safer for sensitive data like login passwords and financial transactions. Thus, any website that requires you to log in before getting to the search page of that website will probably not work in a FileMaker web viewer. Okay, so when you're researching websites that you maybe want to point to through a web viewer in FileMaker, it's all about the method that they use to supply your query, your search phrase. Do they do it as part of the URL string? If so, you're in good shape. If not, it's not going to work as a web viewer or via a web viewer. Okay, let me jump back into our PowerPoint presentation. And here are some common pitfalls to avoid when using web viewers. First, you cannot put a web viewer in a portal row, but you can put a popover button in a portal row and then put a web viewer inside the popover panel. And that can be a fantastic trick. We might do that in our advanced web viewers session sometime in the future. Next, web viewers do not display in table view except in the header, footer, top navigation, or bottom navigation parts. The choice or the part that's obviously missing from that list is the body part. So if you have a layout that's being viewed in table view, a web viewer will not display if you have it in the body part or in any part other than header, footer, top nav, or bottom nav. And lastly, you should avoid stacking other objects in front or behind web viewers, as they may not render properly. Okay. All right, this was a short little session, but that's what I wanted to get into today. Are there any questions about what we've looked at today?